So England's rivers are filled with a chemical cocktail of sewage, agricultural waste and plastic. That's according to a cross-party group of MPs, and it's putting both public health and nature at risk.
There's a new report released today which finds that not one single river in England is free from pollution. The Environmental Audit Committee wants to see tougher monitoring and enforcement. A warning that our environment correspondent Jonah Fisher's report includes some pretty gruesome pictures.
See it down there? I don't know what that is. It looks like a bit like poo, doesn't it?
Ashley Smith is searching for sewage.
These particles coming out.
This is Shill Brook in Oxfordshire, a stream that receives the outflow from 2 water treatment plants.
With this camera, we've seen basically chopped up, untreated sewage coming out.
Ashley comes here often to monitor the water quality. His videos, evidence of an ecosystem being steadily poisoned.
Yes, that's visible, but in sewage, you can imagine everything that goes into your drains at home, through your shower and sink and toilet, all the chemicals that you see in the supermarkets, all of that goes into this. When it's untreated, it's not even affected in any way. We've done some riverfly monitoring here, some invertebrate sampling, and in this area here, we found virtually nothing in the invertebrate department, apart from some bloodworms, which will live in virtually anything. It's dreadful.
For the last year, Parliament's Environmental Audit Committee has been putting together a report into the state of England's rivers, and it's published today.
The MP's report blames pretty much everyone for what it calls the mess of England's rivers. Water companies, farmers, inadequate testing and monitoring, years of complacency by policymakers. And also you and I, for all the things that we throw down the toilet every day that go on to block the sewers.
It's a very complex system that we have, but in essence, for the last 60 years, we have not, as a nation, invested in our water treatment assets to the same extent as we've invested in what happens above ground. Underground, it's unseen. People don't know that it's there until there's a problem, by which time it's too late.
So when the sewage has been fully treated in the sewage works,
the role of water companies is also scrutinised, with MPs saying they'd have to invest more and become more transparent about when they allow raw sewage to flow into rivers.
Were we wrong to expect private water companies to put the quality of water ahead of profits?
No, I don't believe that at all. It's not a question of public or private. It's about doing a good job, getting the incentives right and the regulation right, and having the right people with the right equipment and the right investment. We regard all discharges of untreated sewage as unacceptable, but it's going to take a long time to get that problem completely solved.
It will also take money and political will. But at least the pollution of our rivers is no longer a dirty secret. Jonah Fisher, BBC News, in Oxfordshire.
Now, DEFRA did tell this programme that it welcomes today's report and will not hesitate to take action against water companies which are failing to reduce pollution.
So let's talk about it more. Joining us from the banks of the River Lee is former musician Fergal Sharkey, who's been campaigning on this issue for a long time. Morning, Fergal. And also we have Alistair Chisholm here in the studio with us from the Chartered Institute of Water and Environmental Management. Very good morning to both of you. I know both of you are very passionate about rivers and what's happening with the rivers. Fergal, you have the best scenery, so we're going to talk to you first.
No offence.
No offence. Fergal, describe the scene behind you, because a lot of people think of rivers, they think beautiful, and they think, let's spend some time there, and these are lovely, clean places. What have you seen in the rivers that you know?
Well, what behind me is what's known as the Amel Magna Fishery, which is the oldest fly fishing club in the country. In fact, members have been standing at this very spot for 180 years. So we're quite acquainted and very familiar with this river. As this report highlights, to quote the report, England's rivers are in a mess. Every single river is polluted with a toxic cocktail of sewage, farm waste and plastics. And for me, what this report actually exposes is the complete disarray, if not shambles, of government policy, the political oversight, the complacency, as the report refers to, and in reality, 30 years of regulatory failure on the part of the Environment Agency and Ofwat to properly protect, safeguard and look after these rivers.
Fergal, Naga, morning. You know, I think so many people, I'm sure you included, morning, are so sick of kind of hearing that for decades we've seen this happen to our environment. And more now than ever, we are mindful of our environment and protecting it. What can happen today or in the next 3 months that will improve this situation?
Well, ironically enough, you could start with the water companies simply complying with the law. They know, and they've known for decades, that they've not been complying with the law. The regulators can start enforcing the legislation that's been on place for 30 years. And the biggest thing, because here's the thing, Naga, these rivers are simply a proxy for our approach overall as a nation towards the environment. What we need right now more than ever is leadership, political vision, a will, a determination and an ambition to deliver on what's existing in the legislation, and so far, unfortunately, I see none of those qualities available, and certainly not within Whitehall right now.
OK, Fergal, I should say the Water UK, which is the trade association for the water industry, says water companies are looking to invest £6 billion in what it's calling environmental improvements. Is that not Oh, you're laughing.
As the committee itself discovered, you have to be exercise a degree of caution when repeating numbers from the water industry. As the report itself highlights, there was some of the evidence given by a very senior figure in the industry, which the committee described as disingenuous.
Okay.
My understanding, that so-called investment is actually nothing more than daily maintenance, operational overhead cost, and nothing resembling actually investing and doing something to make a difference.
Okay, can I pick up with Alistair? My apologies, Alistair, we don't have much time here. I mean, as Fergal says, it's what we do now that counts most. I mean, so what do you see as the places where you can make the most improvement? How do you do that?
I think the problem is this is a really complex problem. There's a whole range of different pollutants that are finding their way into our rivers, and we don't really understand how that process is working, where the biggest influxes is coming. So the first thing that we could really do is get more monitoring in on the ground so that we really understand the detail of the problem. Once we understand it, we can start tackling it. That will take money, undoubtedly, so probably considerably more than £6 billion, and it will take probably decades to properly fix. But there are some quick wins that we can put in place soon.
We are going to carry on this debate in just a second, but stay with us for a moment. Time now is 8:59. Let's pick up where Alistair, what you were saying. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, you included, because I know we were talking before and you said the reason you do your job is because as a little boy you used to run around rivers and love those places. A lot of passion about this, and we look at COP26 and we think of all those words that were said, and yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've never been more aware as a society of the importance of our environment from a climate change perspective, and also as far as nature decline is concerned. Over the past decade, that awareness has really risen amongst society. Over the past decade, the funding for our environmental regulators and the amount of money that's gone into fixing this hasn't kept pace with that. In fact, the funding for the regulator has been cut quite considerably. So we really need to reflect the importance of this issue in how we invest in our environment.
Sorry, I was just reading a statement here from DEFRA. We read some of the right replies from DEFRA as well. It says water companies want to invest more, and they're the ones pushing the government to encourage the economic regulator, Ofwat, to enable this increased spending over the next decade. Is that accurate in your point of view?
It's true to a point, but over the past decades, there's been a really strong emphasis from government to the economic regulator to keep bills low. At the same time, these are privatised companies. They have been paying dividends to their shareholders. So the amount of money that has been reinvested in maintaining sewage infrastructure, for example, just hasn't kept pace with the pressures that have become have been put on that infrastructure through things like more housing development, more cars on our roads, and the oils and stuff from those drain into these networks and then find their ways into the river. So we're putting more pressure on all of these environmental systems and we're not spending enough to look after it.
Fergal, do you want to pick up on some of those thoughts Alistair's making there? As individuals, what can people do to try and make things better? How do you put pressure on people? What do you do in your daily lives to try and change things?
Well, the reality is we could start holding people to account, which is part of the process today. We don't need to measure these rivers anymore. We've been doing that since 2003. It's why we know these rivers are polluted, so there's no need to carry on kicking a can measuring things. We know that everybody's been passing the buck. Water companies have now abstracted £72 billion in dividends out of these companies. We've ended up with rivers full of sewage. What we actually need is a government to deliver a timetable, costed, funded, and the accountability to fix this problem. Everybody knows what needs to be done. Someone just needs to take responsibility, and as individuals, we need to hold water companies, the regulators, and government to account for the job they so far have failed to do.
Fergal, can I draw on your artistic nature just for a moment?
Yeah.
This is important. We've spoken about this, the issue of our
Yeah.
rivers, and I don't think anyone would disagree. This is something that needs to be looked at. You love spending time by the river, and today is quite a fraught day. There's a lot of tension around regarding various news stories, and sometimes we just need some calm. Could you give us and our viewers just a thought as you're ambling along a beautiful river like where you are with this dappled sunshine? Give us a thought.
Sorry, what was that, Naga? I just missed the last section of that. Forgive me.
Just give us a calming thought about what to think about if you're ambling along a beautiful river like where you are today, drawing on your creative, your artistic nature, just to bring some calm to this morning. It's been a fraught morning for in many ways.
Well, as it turns out, rivers are not only the veins and the lifeblood of the country, but all of us spiritually, as I would say it. And in fact, the last words written in a book called The Complete Angler, published 400 years ago, was actually written on the very banks of this river where I'm now standing. And as Isaac Walton said, study to be quiet.
I tell you what, there's a lesson in that for us all, I'm sure. Fergal, thank you so much. Fergal Sharkey, thank you. And Alistair Chisholm, thank you very much as well.